Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order for the day. First item on our agenda is approval of today's agenda. We have one addition, and item number 5 is being removed from the agenda for today.
I move approval with the addition and postponement of number 5.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to be heard. Seeing none. Approve payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to pay.
Second.
Motion to approve payment of bills and vouchers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And our first item, revised budget for the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Corporation. Jim Garten. Good morning, Jim.
Morning.
Come on, Jeff.
Welcome.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. We have kind of gone through a couple of processes on our 2016 budget, and I think these are the final revised numbers that have been approved, not by you, but our board and our executive committee to present. I think everybody received a copy of the budget that we had presented. Just several things that I wanted to call out in this, which is some changes on the income side. We have in the past not had the city of Fargo or West Fargo as an investor. And starting in 2016, West Fargo has agreed, and we're waiting on final approval, but they have told us that there's not a problem with a Fargo investment. So, which we're very pleased about, is to have other community investment. Moorhead had made the commitment in 2014. So now we have our 3 major communities, and not just the counties, from a public side being invested in the organization, which we think is very positive. Mm-hmm. Also, we have had a fairly substantial increase in our interest income number, because we have taken our reserves and put them into both 3, 6-month, and 1-year program, so that we get a little bit more interest rate versus just having them in a standard, checking account type of thing, money market. So we have seen an increase there, and by reinvesting that portfolio. Right now, our current reserve balance is about $1.8 million. We as an organization try to maintain our reserve at 1 year of operating expenses. So we're a little bit over that this year, but as you'll look on the second page under what we call projects and initiatives that are not included in our operating budget, they include investments that we make in all the colleges and universities, NDSCS, MSUM, and we also support different organizations. We have a very significant number in there for air service. When a new service comes into the marketplace, there has to be matching local funds. To give you an example, the Dallas flight 2 years ago that was started, we made a commitment of $100,000 for that flight. We're currently negotiating with a carrier for Seattle and another carrier for the Atlanta direct flights. So we think that we know one of those is going to come to fruition in 2016. So this $100,000 we'll actually have to take more than that out of our reserves to support those programs. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's a cost of doing business with the airlines anymore. We're not the only organization. The airport, the Convention and Visitors Bureau also contribute to these things, and we use that for matching federal funds. So like on the other one, we put up $200,000 and received an $800,000 grant. So it's a very significant set of dollars to ensure the success of the airline. You know, it's good to know that the Dallas flight is averaging over 90% occupancy, so that has been removed, and so we're very excited about these other two opportunities that we're looking at. On our personnel expenses, internal operations, there have really been, these numbers are almost identical to last year. There was a 3% salary increase that goes into a pool for employees. Other than that, all the numbers, other than just percentages, are exactly the same. Internal operations, rent, telephone, all the aspects of that are you know, exactly or very similar to last year in 2015. Entrepreneurial development, there is a fairly significant increase in this area. There is an organization called Emerging Prairie. It's a group of young, made up of 3 individuals that are really facilitating the entrepreneurial growth and what's going on. They're the ones that hold the TEDx event, which, you know, we had 1,800 people at in late July. Startup weekends, all kind of other different programs that they're doing, and it's really making a significant difference. We as an organization decided that it was imperative that they succeed, and as part of that commitment, we've made a commitment for the remaining portion of this year and next year to help support them until they get their nonprofit status and that they can actually be on their own starting in 2017. We felt that it was critical to the region, and we think that it'll be a good long-term investment from our standpoint. So that's the reason for the very big jump. The marketing and business retention and workforce retention are very, very similar to last year. I'd say they're right on track. Our professional services costs, which are accounting and legal, very similar. So we have a total expense of about 1.528 and a total revenue of about 1.534. So we have after depreciation, we see a negative net income of about $16,000. But I think that looking at all those numbers, I think we try to do a zero-based budget and try to come as close as we can to that. And as we look through the entrepreneurial commitment that we're making with Emerging Prairie, it is on a month-to-month basis. If they get additional funding from the state or other areas, we will reduce that amount. We also put one of our staff people, John Mahachik, on their board of directors so we could make sure that we're seeing where the financial aspects of what they're doing, so we have some control, and the commitment is on a month-to-month basis. So if you know, we see that they're going in a direction we don't think is in the best interest of our region, then we have the ability to stop that. So we tried to think about that. And then, of course, with the projects and initiatives that I just mentioned, as you go down and look at that list, the things that we do with the universities is we support programmatic things that they want to do or scholarships. So it really is up to the president of each university, and that includes M-State and NDSCS, in what way is the best way we can support, and it has to be associated with business, and there has to be some type of a tie to our region and our market as part of that commitment. So we think that that's a very good investment for our long-term future with the universities and colleges. The rest of these are events except for the North Dakota Small Business Development Council. Minnesota, Moorhead, Clay County is very lucky. They have an incredible SBDC office that's housed at Concordia. In North Dakota, it's handled differently, and it's being run out of the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. To give you an example, on the Moorhead side, there's a staff of 3 people. On the North Dakota side, there's a staff in the Fargo area of 1. And they're not sure that they're going to be able to maintain that one person. So we and a number of other banks and other associations are getting together to support that. So that's what the SBDC funds are. We have put in for some $25,000 for unspecified growth plan projects. Again, this is below the line. That won't have any impact. These are just coming out of reserve funds. You know, we're always looking for other unique opportunities and things to do, so we always want to have a little bit of play there. If we see something at one of the colleges that maybe needs $25,000, then we have the ability to draw from that account. So we have tried to, over the last several years, go to a zero-based budget and try to make sure that we're balancing that budget. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions or see if anybody has any specific issues.
Thanks, Jim. Questions? Kevin?
Jim, the projects and initiatives for the 270,000, so that you're saying those are coming out of reserves for 2016.
Right.
If you do, you may not even decide to do them all. Are they all committed to?
No, those are just
Those are plans.
placeholders.
Yeah.
That we have done a lot of those events in the past. A lot of times when an event gets to a point, for example, I think under the TEDx thing, we, over the last couple of years to get it off and running, we had committed about $10,000. We don't need to be the main sponsor anymore. They've really taken off, and so we've reduced that in half. And we'll continue to look at each one of those as they come up. And as time goes on, and if they're stronger, then we'll reduce the thing down to zero or a minimal investment. You know, our goal is just to get these things up and running and make sure they're solidified for the community.
In past years, have you had similar items outside the budget that?
Yeah, some, you know, things will come up, and specifically, I guess the most recent one was at NDSU in their engineering school, where we had budgeted $20,000, and they had, between the business school and the School of Engineering, were doing a project that directly related to some economic benefits of the community, and they had requested a $35,000 commitment, and so we stepped ahead and did that. So we just put a little bit of that money as placeholder just to give ourselves some leeway.
Okay, I know, the reason I raised that question is because I know you said that you like to have in your reserves basically 1 year of reoperation,
Right.
which would be that 1.5.
Right.
And you currently have 1.8.
Yeah.
And so is that why you have the 270 there, because
Yeah.
you got that cushion from?
We
what
want
you're-
to try to, you know, it's not our intent to build the reserve.
Okay.
The intent is to, I think it's fiscally responsible to have that 1 year of operating expenses set aside for, you know, you never know. We don't have any guaranteed funding. They're all, you know, everybody's funding is up to them on an annual basis. So we feel we have to maintain that at least a 1 year reserve fund.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as a member of the board that sits in on the quarterly meetings, I see a lot of good that comes out of this organization, and I think the investment that Clay County is putting into it is well worth the money.
Oh,
And thank you
so
for your
much.
work, Jim.
Yep, appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of great work being done for both Clay and Cass County by the
Yeah.
Greater Fargo Moore EDC, and
Yeah, I'm
continues
disappointed
to
that
get better.
last Thursday we had an event at the Fargo Theater. We had between 500 and 600, what basically were teachers from all three districts. Moorhead, we had Dilworth too, we had Moorhead, we had Fargo, we had West Fargo, and had a speaker come in and show an hour-and-a-half documentary on, you know, education and the changes in education and how they might work. And it's just great to see the three superintendents and districts working together and doing those things through a program we started with, you know, a way called Education That Works. You don't see a lot of those things happening, and it's not great sometimes for the media, but it was a powerful night, and it was just really well received. I mean, it was fun to watch that the Fargo Theater actually had the 45 minutes after the event, they were kicking groups of teachers and people out of the building because they wanted to close. But it's just great to see that kind of communication, and it's really nice to see something that's across the river, it's 2 states. It's really pretty amazing to see that kind of collaboration happen. So we're really excited to be a part of that. If I can answer any more questions.
Any other questions for Jim? Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you coming. Okay, let's see. FM diversion, public-private partnership. Coming up, gentlemen. Mike, coming up, too. Yes, we do.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning.
Good morning, Bruce.
Thank you.
Bruce and Mike, welcome.
Thanks.
Is Rocky coming too?
This is kind of elsewhere, so he won't be.
Thank you.
So maybe while Bruce is just handing that out, just 2 comments. One, the presentation you're going to receive this morning is identical to a presentation that the Morehead City Council had recently received. Bruce will be walking through the slide pack, but we just wanted to make sure that we made it up to the county board as well to give that same kind of presentation about public-private partnerships and a process called a notice of intent that is currently underway and has been filed regarding a notice to the private sector and the public sector that the Diversion Authority and its federal sponsors are considering a public-private partnership. And so Bruce will talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to note that the Morehead City Council has also received the same presentation. Bruce came through our meeting recently, and I'm just here to answer any questions at the end. So.
Okay. Morning, Bruce
Morning.
Miller. I'm with Seachstone Hill. We're the program manager for the Diversion Authority. So I can walk you through this presentation and then answer any questions that you might have on it. As we go through on the intro slide, one of the reasons we're here is the Diversion Authority is made up of 6 entities, and Clay County is one of those. So we think it's good to inform all of you of what we're doing as far as the Diversion Authority on an individual basis. I know Kevin's at the board meeting, probably comes from reports back, but get a little bit more detail here. So it's an informational briefing, not looking for any action at this time. And also want to just put out that anytime you'd like a briefing from anybody with the Diversion Authority, we're here to give as much information as you'd like. Mike said we've briefed both the Morehead City Council and the Fargo City Commission on this. So I'll talk about both the P3 and the split delivery, notice of intent, other federal activities, a little bit of update, and then where we're going from here with the project. So first question generally is, what's a public-private partnership? And it's really a delivery method that is an option out there that many entities can use. So in its basic form, it's just a contract between the public and private sectors to design, construct, finance, operate, and maintain a project. In this case, the diversion channel and associated infrastructure. So sometimes it's also called a DBFOM because of the 5 components of the project or the contract. It's not privatization. Sometimes when people hear public-private partnership, they think of privatization, but in this case, the public entity, the Diversion Authority, will always own all the assets. The private entity will never own any part of the channel or the diversion. So, next slide shows the map of where PPP is allowed in the U.S. This is a couple years old, and I don't know if there's new states added, but both North Dakota and Minnesota both have legislation that allows for public-private partnerships. So we're got good enabling legislation here. And it's fairly popular, I'm going to say, around the world. A lot of Australian, European, Canadian P3s exist. It's growing in popularity in the U.S., but it's really a worldwide delivery system. So on the next slide, this is the traditional delivery method of design bid build that people are fairly familiar with, where the public agency has separate contracts for design, construction, and then O&M if there is a operation and maintenance component of that. And then you get your financing, if you need it, from individual sources outside of the design and construction contracts. On a PPP model, in this case, you've got a public entity that contracts what we commonly call a special purpose vehicle, or a SPV, which is a company that is formed specifically to deliver the PPP as the private entity. They'll bring together equity providers, debt, design engineers, constructors, operations, and maintenance folks all together in one team to deliver the project. So it's one contract that the public agency, that Diversion Authority, will hold with the special purpose vehicle. And then there's also funding and debt that may come in on the public side of that as well. So on the diversion channel, it's a federal project that's being done with the Corps of Engineers, and the proposed plan for the delivered project now is with what we're calling a split delivery plan. So the diversion channel and the associated infrastructure, which is shown in green on the map, is going to be done by non-federal sponsors or the Diversion Authority. So that includes everything downstream of the gated inlet into the channel, all the way to the outlet to the Red River in the north. And then the Corps will deliver the southern embankment and associated infrastructure, so the gated structures on the Red and Wild Rice River, as well as the gated inlet into the diversion channel, as well as a mitigation project. So projects like the Oxbow-Hixenbach-Ewing levee and the in-town levees are still under the Corps' jurisdiction in this split delivery plan. So the reason we're using a PPP is it was when the project was authorized in the Word of Bill in 2014, the Congress essentially directed the Corps to look at alternative financing projects such as the PPP. So this really gives us the surest route to federal dollars by delivering this project as a P3. Another good advantage, and why a lot of folks use P3s, is it gives you schedule and cost certainty. So when the project is bid out as one large project for the diversion channel, before you sign the contract, you will know the exact schedule that the project will be built on and how much the project will cost. If we were to deliver it as 25, 30 construction contracts, you wouldn't know how much it's going to cost until you bid that last project out, which could be 6 or 8 years in the future. So it really is, it's really good for knowing that cost certainty up front. Delivers the best value for the public's money, assigns the risks to the party most able to manage the risk, also provides performance guarantees and long-term warranties. Typically on a construction project, you might have a 1-year guarantee on the construction. With a P3 project where you have a 30-year operation and maintenance, which is what we're looking at in this project, contractor, after he designs and builds it, has to maintain that asset for 30 years. So you really get a performance guarantee. It's not, they've got to put their money behind how well that performs and operates over a long term. Promotes delivery and innovation, shortens the schedule, so we'll get flood risk reduction sooner, and improves the constructed quality.
Jenny?
Bruce, can you tell me why going with a PPP would improve the constructed quality?
It's similar for the, because the contractor does have to back that up for a 30-year period. So they will have, I will say, more stringent internal quality control, knowing that they have to back that up for a 30-year period rather than a 1-year warranty period.
I would hope, though, if the Corps of Engineers is doing a project, that they would back it to a high amount of quality.
You,
right? I mean,
you do, and that's it's always a tough thing. You talk to any contractor that you would hire, and they're going to say, I build a quality product, and they're going to stand behind it. But you do get a little bit different of I'll say an attitude or approach from the contractor when he's got to back it up for 30 years versus 1 year. I mean, if you're hiring somebody to build your house and talk to a couple of builders and they all say they do a quality job, but one of them says he's going to back it for 30 years and the other one says he's going to back it for 1 year, they probably both do a quality job, but one might be, do you feel more comfortable with one than the other?
right, but isn't the Corps of Engineers going to back the project for more than 1 year? I mean, that's what I'm not understanding what you're saying.
I do know that because I asked this question just at our last meeting, the Corps of the channel will still be required to be built to Corps of Engineer standards for these purposes. So what Bruce is saying is that because of this type of arrangement, and because that contractor is going to be obligated for warranty purposes, that there's a good chance that they're going to go above and beyond even what the minimum standards are that are required by the Corps. That's simply what's being said here.
And the Corps will still be doing their yearly inspections on the project over the life of the project, because it is a federal project, so they will be doing that. But if they find deficiencies, the Corps doesn't come in then and fix those deficiencies. They just point those out to the diversion authority and require the diversion authority to fix those deficiencies.
Okay, so if there's a problem with that project, the Southern Embankment, that the Corps of Engineers is going to be the sponsor on it under this.
Yeah.
If there's a problem, the Corps of Engineers isn't going to back it, they're going to just hand it over to the diversion authority?
The diversion authority will be responsible for the long-term operation and maintenance of it. So, yeah, the Corps won't come back in and keep building it. So they have stringent quality controls as they're going through on inspections.
One difference, so what she mentioned, the Southern Embankment will be built by the Corps of Engineers, not by the...
Right, it'll be built by the Corps of Engineers contractors.
Frank, you had a question?
I was just talking about these contractors, you say they're responsible for 30 years. They're out of business after 5 years. They're still responsible for it, or?
Right, and that's key part is when we go out for requests for qualification to look at these teams coming in, the financing portion of the PPP is very important, because what you're looking for on that are the financial people that come in with very long-term assets. You look for things that are going to be around for a very long period of time. So the types of investors that you get in on these can be some long-term pension funds, insurance company funds, other things that have a very long life. So even if a particular contractor of that team does not, isn't around after 5 years or something like that, the underlying backing is going to be around for that longer period of time.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
These contractors also have their own insurance policy for that long term. Could that be an option of theirs, or doesn't it work that way?
It typically doesn't work that way on the financing
What you
side.
just said then, to Frank's question, the long-term investors, the money is there to take care of this.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different types of P3 models that are out there. What a lot of people are familiar with is sort of like a fee-based, where you might have a toll road. Investor comes in with money, builds the asset, gets tolls or rents on that, and makes his money that way. In this case, the diversion authority is not going to generate income from the flood diversion project. So this is what's called a payment-based or type model. So when the P3 entity comes in, they will be bringing a significant portion of funding to the project. Not 100% of the funding, but a significant portion of the funding of the project. And they will build the diversion channel. Then on a yearly basis for the next 30 years, they will get paid, repaid, and the repayment will be a combination of repaying some of their capital costs, some of their financing cost, and their O&M portion of that cost. So they don't get paid entirely for the construction until the end of the 30-year period. So they're still on the hook. So if someone were to walk away after 5 years out of the 30 years, they would have only been paid back, not only 15% of the money they brought to the table for the project. So if they're bringing in the range of $100 to $200 million on that, that's the incentive that they have for staying away. And if they do walk away, you've got money in your pocket to complete the project on your own.
So my question is on the revenue stream, and maybe
Yeah.
you'll get into this. If you said the diversion authority is not going to be making money on this, where does the revenue stream come from to repay these investors over the course of 30 years?
Yeah, and it's going to come from the same sources of money that if we were to conventionally deliver this. So it's the sales taxes in Cass County and Fargo, which is also backed by the Special Assessment District, the state funding, state funding, and any bond funding that the diversion authority puts out, and then also anything that comes in from the state of Minnesota as well. So it's the funding stream from the owner's side really doesn't change, because it's just, like I say, this is a different delivery method. If we were doing this as a design build bid build, we'd have to come up with that same amount of money.
Right.
And so this is just coming up with the similar amount of money, only it's being paid over a longer period of time as opposed to needing all that up front. So. All right. In the next one, talks about what I had said there with the availability payment based. So every year with this availability type payment, I'd say nominally in the fall, there'll be an inspection done of the diversion, and if it meets all the quality standards year in and every year, the B3 entity will be paid their annual amount. So every year they have to earn their payment for that year by making sure that the diversion channel and all the bridges are maintained to the standard that we set forward in the contract. So they earn that every year. They don't just get the payment, they have to earn the payment every year by making sure that everything is up to the standard.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So if the company or individual needs to earn that payment, are you saying then you're looking at investors on the construction side as opposed to the civilian side, as to make sure that it's up to par and it's passing the standards? You're talking construction side, right?
Construction and operation and maintenance.
Right.
So we'll do an inspection of the channel and an inspection of all the bridges, and they will have to meet a certain quality standard that we'll put into the contract.
Okay.
And if they don't, let's say their yearly payment is, just pick a number, it's $10 million a year or something like that. If they haven't maintained things, if we've got issues with the channel slope or a bridge, we can take deductions out of that. And so it does require them to meet a standard every year. So factors of a successful PPP. This is based on a broad range of experience across the industry. That these are what help a successful PPP. Is to have an outcome-based mindset, which means you've got the purpose of the project in mind, good political and economic stability, experience and expertise on the client team, to each to them. It's done a number of these projects. Ernst & Young was hired as the financial advisor, very strong in this industry. Also got good legal support. We're going to be putting out a RFQ for some additional legal support. And then we've got strong government support and championship. So when the industry looks at what's going on in the Fargo-Moorhead area with this diversion, they see a lot of things that they really like with, you know, the strong leadership that we've got here and the strong need for the project in this area. So benefits specifically, the Fargo Diversion Authority, Moorhead and Clay County, provides cost and schedule certainty, as I talked about, fosters innovation and efficiency, will allow the contractor to bring their ideas to the project as well. You've got a stringent performance-based contract, so it's got to perform in order for them to get paid. In addition to cost certainty up front on the construction side, you also get cost certainty going forward on the O&M side, so you can plan and budget for the next 30 years on O&M on the channel. And then once you take the asset over after 30 years, you've got 30 years of operating history that if you take it over and the Diversion Authority maintains it for the next 36, however many years, you have that built-in operating history. And then in addition to the yearly inspections for the availability payment, there's a handover agreement at the end, and the asset has to be handed over in a certain agreed-upon condition, so that'll be in the contract up front.
Kevin?
Before we get into this notice of intent piece, the work that the Diversion Authority or the Corps does, this project or this joint public-private, this is a little bit different than, for example, where Dave, in our highway area, sometimes and across the state of Minnesota, we've heard of these design-build projects, which also can be public-private. It happens a lot, I think, in the highway and bridge construction area. One of the things here is that the design component is still controlled by the Army Corps, right? So the channel itself is still going to be, it's going to have to meet all of the Corps standards.
It's, it won't be, with the split delivery, the channel is really under the Diversion Authority. So the Corps will be, there's a advisory role as opposed to an approver role, but essentially
but basically where it goes is still dictated by the Corps, isn't it?
As far as
Or does
the
that go-
location?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the alignment
Is still set by the Corps.
Because that's been going in, we're under a number of approvals that have already been obtained.
Right.
And we've got the federal EIS,
Right.
we've got the chief's report.
So if you change that too much, it can...
Right, we've got the Minnesota EIS that's out for public comment now, so some of those basic things are set. So those are givens going in. So
However, Bruce, I recall there was a slight alignment adjustment that we did on the very northern part of this project, just to give you an example, on the channel itself. And that slight alignment adjustment also saved the project, I believe it was close to $100 million. I would imagine still as going forward, there can be small tweaks and things like that done that can also still benefit all of the people who are paying for this, whether they're from New Orleans or wherever they're from, who are going to be investing into this thing, the federal dollars.
Right, but again, those are, little straightenings of the alignment, but I mean, basically.
They would have to be items that would not change the federal EIS
Right.
or the Minnesota EIS, right? It would all have to be.
Right. Because a project, once the project achieved authorization, we made those alignment changes prior to federal authorization. Once it was authorized, Congress authorized this project as basically laid out in the chief's report. Okay. So you really can't you can make slight tweaks. It's the mantra we were sort of using in the before it was feet, not miles. I mean, there will be some adjustments, and anytime you advance design, you're going to get some natural adjustments.
Let's not talk New Orleans when we're talking about a dam. We all know what happened with the dam in New Orleans.
Well, but it had they done what had been suggested many, many years ago, maybe they wouldn't have had that trouble, so. Can I also just spend a minute here to talk about this money savings? Is that in the intent part of it? Are we there anywhere?
Well, I mean, the money,
Can I take a quick shot at it? Because I really,
Sure.
what I really want to do is I want to comment, it was either Senator Hoeven or Senator Heitkamp, when the general was here from the Corps, made the comment that there was probably $20 billion worth of projects, Corps projects, federal projects on the books. And it would take 20-some years to complete all of those as of today. If under this new system where you can get into this public-private partnership, it basically cuts the federal government's contribution in half. So really the federal government is the one who's gaining the savings of the project, not locally. Locally is still going to get their project there, but they're going to be paying what they thought they were going to be paying. But it's the federal government who's making the savings. And, so the way they put that is if you take that $20 billion in projects, and if all projects did that, that would cut that down to $10 billion, which is certainly then becomes more of something that can be done in a range of 7 to 10 years. Otherwise you're out there 15 to 20 years. And I thought that was a pretty compelling statement to make. And from a federal standpoint, and when we look at about ways for saving federal dollars, on a national basis, and I think that's why there's so much support for this by Senator Hoeven and Heitkamp, and for that matter, the general, because the general sees it as ways to get more of their projects that are important to them done.
right, it stretches their dollars further, and that's what they would like to see.
I wanted to touch on that financial
Okay,
piece.
yep.
I have one question quickly before we get back and get into the intent. If I can go back to the split delivery plan again.
Sure.
I'm still having issues with the sponsorship on the diversion channel versus the southern embankment. And now sitting here reflecting on what we're talking about, being a Clay County commissioner, I realize we're 1 in 6 in this entire project, but if we're advertising the fact that the improved quality and the party most able to manage the risk is going to be the party on the diversion channel, wouldn't we want the improved quality on the southern embankment? If we're holding, that seems to be the highest risk part of the project to me, does it not? So wouldn't we want to advertise the fact that that's the best quality?
Yes, you want high quality wherever you can get it. And, the Corps is going to be delivering the southern embankment and those control structures. And I'm never going to say the Corps is not going to give a good quality project to, product here.
We did. In the second piece, we did say that. This page says that it's improved constructed quality.
But there's, they are going to, design and have constructed a good quality project for the southern embankment and those control structures.
Do you understand maybe my angle on this?
Do.
If that's what we're going to advertise, the need for a PPP, as someone who's going to hear from constituents that are located in this staging area, the southern embankment isn't constructed up to the quality that the diversion channel is, we have problems, I think.
Well, it's going to be well constructed. It's going to meet all the Corps standards. It's going to be annually inspected. There won't be any issues with that facility.
I think it would be the people north of the control structure that would be concerned that it's done to the utmost, because...
But those are Clay County residents.
Sure they are.
Right, so
Sure.
we need to ask that question.
Right, right. And, I think we can, if you take a look historically at at the work performance that the Corps has done throughout the country, and I think they have a fairly successful rate of projects that they've done when it comes to flood control. I think the numbers early on in my process in this, I think they had like a 98% success rate in their work, so that's pretty good.
And the other is, as we get into the notice of intent, initially what the Corps had said they were going to use design bid build for their portion of it. They have, when we gave them the notice of intent to review, they also said it'd be design bid build, or it could be also design build. So what we're saying is the Diversion Authority is putting out a PPP. I think the Corps is also looking at different delivery methods for theirs, and including going beyond just design bid build into looking at a design build type project. They may not go the full PPP, but some of those other things to, which I think you could get better, improved quality. I mean, we're talking very small improvements, because I think you're going to get a good, probably,
I would hope we're not saying think.
Yes.
I mean, if we're,
We are going to get good quality.
I would also like to remind everybody that in this process, we're talking about the high hazard dam, is what we're talking about here. And the high hazard dam is going to face the scrutiny also of the state of Minnesota. And the state of Minnesota is going to have to be certain that this thing is going to be designed and constructed to the standards to protect the citizens of Clay County. So that high hazard dam is not going to be an easy permit to get. But you can be assured, as far as I'm concerned, that Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, is not going to release any permits until they're satisfied that that thing is constructed to the best standards possible.
Also has the most stringent core criteria as well for dam construction.
thank you.
Oh, Brian, go ahead, sorry.
Just an observation on this. I agree with Commissioner Mojo's comment on that. Why would we say improve? To me, that statement, I think the quality is going to be there throughout. I think that statement should be removed, because I think your quality is going to be the same all over. So that brings up controversy, though. If this is going to be better than that, I think it doesn't sound good.
Yeah, because we're after the best quality, regardless of the
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree. We will take that. Thank you. So notice of intent when the General Bostic came and visited the Diversion Authority Board meeting on September 2nd. The Diversion Authority also did pass and issue the notice of intent, which is sort of the formal declaration that this portion of the project will be delivered as a P3 project. One of the reasons we wanted to do that was to show to the Corps that we are going to be doing this as a P3. It helps with going after that federal funding. But also, we've been getting a lot of interest from the industry and the marketplace, and so we wanted to put out some general rules of how they needed to contact the Diversion Authority, what the schedule was going to be, how we were going to be looking forward, and also say we've still got some hurdles we've got to go through before we can really go much further on this procurement process. One of the key things is the Minnesota EIS and getting that determination of adequacy. Got a preliminary injunction on the project down in Oxbow, Hixon-Baki levy. We need that lifted. We also want to get a federal appropriation and a new start out of Congress. So I want to clarify to people that are coming in and asking us when we're going to start that we've got some things that we've got to do before we can go too much further on this. So the notice of intent, essentially, It's written in the language to the P3 proposers, so it's for that audience. Gives background on the project, so it gives the scope, defines our project purpose, which is to reduce flood risk, qualify that area, both homes in Fargo and Moorhead for 100-year FEMA certification, and allow flood fights to, the very, very large floods up to 500 year. And the goals are of the PPP are to get innovative design, construction, and financing to get both cost savings and schedule improvements. So talk about the current status of the project. We've got the chief's report, the federal EIS, and congressional authorization, and then talks about those enabling actions I talked about a minute ago. It's going to be a two-phase procurement process. First will be requests for qualifications, then we'll shortlist down and get proposals. So during that request for qualifications, that's really where we see the team and really look for teams that we can show that long-term, that they'll be around for the 30 years that we want them to be around for this project. It also, we've got a lot of local firms that have been working on the project, and different firms that were coming in looking to form teams, wanted to know who they could team with, who they couldn't team with. So we talked with a number of the local firms, and some are eligible to be on P3 teams, and some have decided that they wanted to continue to work for the Diversion Authority, ourselves included, so we would not be eligible to be on a P3 team. So there's certain ones that we're in and out, and that defines that for the marketplace. Identifies the website, also states that we're really interested in using local firms from both states, both counties, both cities, so encouraging that when they're forming their teams. It also, the notice of intent doesn't commit the Diversion Authority or any of its members to any future actions. It's just really, this is our intent to do it. We got to see where the future takes us.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this page for the people who will be watching this, and I think this is something that, and I don't know if it gets out there enough, but there's, the Diversion Authority does have a very informative website, fmdiversion.com. I would hope that anybody who has questions can go to that, and if they don't find their answers there, they have an opportunity to ask questions through that website. So I would hope that
and there is a public-private partnership tab we've added to that, so if anybody's interested, they can go out there, click on that, and they can read the entire notice of intent. Just a little bit on some federal updates, sort of a project status, but to date, we've had $40 million in federal appropriations for the feasibility and study and project design. As I mentioned earlier, we did get authorized in the 2014 WRDA bill, which also encouraged the use of PPPs. So we're trying to get in the appropriations bill. We've been in 2014 appropriations bill, but this project wasn't selected for a new start in the past, but we're hopeful that we'll get a new start in the future. Has been demonstrated, designated as a demonstration project by the Corps. We did get the visit from General Bostic. He doesn't come out to many projects, and so we took that as a very good sign. He's interested in this. It's the highest levels of the Corps headquarters that it's on their radar. So we're going to continue to pursue a new construction start. I think some of the Diversion Authority folks are going out end of this month. Is it 30th? There's going to be another visit to the Corps and OMB in D.C. So every year try to make several visits out there. And so continuing trying to get those federal appropriations. So we've got some good language in the current Senate appropriations bill. It's a little bit different language in the House, so we'll see what language is in the final bill. but it's really trying to push the new starts to have some that use public-private partnership, so that there's a long line for federal funding, but there's a very short line that has P3 projects in it. We want to be in the short line, at the front of the short line. So we're also developing a framework for a public-private partnership with the Corps now, so we can be prepared to go as soon as we get that funding. So currently, next steps, Minnesota EIS is out for public comment. We have a public meeting here in Moorhead, on the 14th. And then the comments are due on the 28th. We would, on the PPP procurement, it's probably going to be first, second quarter in 2016 before we make a decision on whether we and how we move forward on that. So we're going to continue working for federal funding and see where the rest of our permitting and objects go. So.
Thank you. Kevin?
Maybe a question for Mike. Part of the process that would have happened down the road would have required the project partnership agreement.
Correct?
That's still there, isn't it?
Right.
So that is still something that we also, and that gets into what will North Dakota pay, what will Minnesota pay, what will all entities pay, right? So that part is still out there that will also need to be done.
There's several governance milestones that will be reached in the next 18 months, 24 months. PPA is one, solidifying your PPP and what you want to do with that, trying to get the concessionaire piece put together. I mean, there's a lot of work really over the next several months. Also just wanted to put some times to that public meeting on October 14. We have a location for that. That's at the Marriott from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. DNR staff is going to be there for 5 hours with a brief presentation at 7 p.m. So the public's invited to attend that. We've been getting that on our website and trying to get that word out. So 5 to 10 p.m. on Wednesday, October 14th.
Thanks. Mike, how about, what did the Moorhead City Council feel about the presentation afterwards? Are they?
Yeah, we actually had a really positive presentation there. I think we had some of the same questions, maybe some different questions too, but I thought it actually went pretty well. I think everybody acknowledges that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we need to be fully engaged in this and make sure that we're doing the right kind of due diligence. This is a big kettle of fish, and you want to make sure that you get that right and make sure that you're doing the kind of due diligence to see if in fact this is a good fit. And I think that the good process step that the authority has made, and I think it's one that our council acknowledged, was that nobody's rushing into a DBO-FOM arrangement. They're really wanting to make sure that we take the kind of time to figure out if it's the right kind of fit. So no decision making here. And again, I think these types of briefings like we did today, these are the things we've got to keep doing in the future.
Kenny?
I have one question. Earlier in the presentation, you talked about this not being a privatization.
Correct.
My question maybe comes from those that are upfronting the money. Will they have any say as to the direction the project goes if they're fronting money? Do they have a vote at the table?
The equity and
Yeah,
debt partners
the
that are
providers.
yes, they do.
So that will be added into the agreement?
Well, they will be part of that concessionaire's agreement that we have with the P3 entity. So the folks that are bringing the capital, the debt and equity to that have a lot of say of what goes on within that. So it's a very integrated team. So they will be, because they're bringing the money, they're going to be watching to make sure that that the design and construction and the O&M piece all fit together so that they can get their repayment, because this is an investment for them. They're going to watch over their investment.
So as one of the entities, will that decrease the amount of say that the other entities have?
Yep. No, I think at a governance level, you still have an owner's responsibility. They will be your contractor providing the work. So the owners, the authority can change. We're just on a limited joint powers agreement right now. That is our authority. That framework might change over time, but they are never co-equal to a government entity.
Okay, yeah, maybe I misunderstood, but
That-
that's
no,
correct.
that clarified.
They're always going to work for the diversion
Okay,
authority.
all right.
And it's just a contractor, but within that team, they
All right,
have.
that's
yeah.
clarified, thank you.
Any other questions for these gentlemen?
Great,
Thank you.
Very good update.
Appreciate it.
Thanks
Good
a lot.
update, yeah, good information, thank you.
Like I say, anytime you'd like this or another topic,
Thank you.
Feel free to-
Thanks, thanks.
Thanks.
okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll do the agenda addition here. Request to replace 2 vehicles used by environmental services.
30 seconds or less.
30 seconds or less, that's...
We were here about a year ago looking to replace vehicles, and we didn't do it at that time. What we're looking at right now, we've got 2 vehicles right now, a 2002 and 2007, both with 80-plus thousand miles on them, looking to replace, and our thought was we're at the end of a model year, so maybe we can get a good deal on 2015 someplace, off the lot. And that's the problem we've run into, is we have people who say, yeah, I've got vehicles, and by the time we get a price quote from them and everything else, bringing it to the board, well, the first one we got was from Luther Ford. They had 5 vehicles. By the time things moved around, they have 1. I guess what I'm asking, the price quotes have been in the, per vehicle, have been in the $28,000 range right now. With our trade-ins, the trade-in values that we've gotten from the 2 dealers that we've talked to up to this point, we can look at buying 2 vehicles for under $40,000, possibly as low as $38,000, depending on what kind of good deals. And they are giving us, we're working on the state contract, so they're giving us the state contract discount or the Lakes County Service Cooperative discount. So we're getting that. We're not ordering them, or our intent right now is not to order them if we can find them. But I guess so that we can move a little bit faster on it, if I could get some authority from the county board to not expend beyond $40,000 on 2 vehicles.
Where's the 40,000 coming from?
We've got it in the internal service fund, so it's not new money, it's out there.
I'll move to approve the request.
Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with what you're doing here, but I guess I would, when I see the miles on these vehicles, when I know in the past it's always been, especially like with our sheriff's vehicles, we're like a 3-year turnover period of time, and from a mileage standpoint and everything. But, since 2002 and into today's vehicles, $85,000, they're barely broke in.
85,000
Miles.
Miles, 85,000 miles. They're barely broke in, on some of these newer vehicles. And I just wonder if we should be, maybe Georgia, she's been kind of in charge of a lot of our fleet stuff, but maybe to just do some research on this to see if, even if we held them a little bit longer. The reason I raise this question is I'm driving a vehicle with 206,000 miles on it, and it runs great.
Yep.
And, so could we see some savings by?
I think though for trading power, the longer we hold on to these older bodied vehicles, I think that's what you're saying.
Right.
We're getting to the
We've got
point
some
where we're
rust starting
changing
in
body
both of the
style.
vehicles.
I was going to ask,
So
are there
then
issues with
we
these
lose our
2?
trading
Yeah.
power.
Yeah, and that's why I asked to do the study, to see, is that really true, the trading part? Is there a difference, or by not having to buy these for, let's say, another 50,000 miles, is there that much difference in the trading power versus your savings and not paying, or having 2 more years?
If we put another 50,000 miles on the 2002, our trading value is going to be almost nothing, because right now it's only about 4,000, 4,500.
Well, and you were saying they're both starting to have rust
Both are
on the
having a
bodies.
little bit of rust issue.
That's sometimes a problem.
And-
Mechanically now, they'll run longer than the bodies will last.
That's
on
more
them,
of an age issue than a mileage use, so.
It's more of a what?
It's more of an age issue of vehicle versus the how many miles are on a vehicle.
Which is why we need to get a newer vehicle, right?
Well, the
My point is.
mileage, is almost the same on the both. the policy in the past has been, about 5,000 miles, 5 years, 75,000 miles. They both have a little bit of rust issue. They both had some expenses mechanically. And we're well beyond the 5-year.
I agree with what we're doing. I'm just saying, nowadays, these vehicles are made to go way more miles than they ever have. And I think at some point we should just research that.
And if we buy a Ford, we won't have rust issues anymore either. They're all of them.
How, in the internal service fund, how much money is there for the replacement of these two vehicles? Is there in excess of the $40,000?
Yes, I believe there's about $60,000 in the internal service fund relative there.
So we'll have a good start on the next time we
Yep.
need to replace them too, so.
Yep.
Okay,
And we're going to go for the lowest price that we can get, but what the quotes that I've gotten back, it appears that for $38,000 to $40,000 with the trades, that we can pick up 2 new vehicles.
Okay, we had a motion to approve this request. Did we have a second? Wayne seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, budget.
Mr. Chair, I think we jumped over Georgia.
Georgia.
Oh, Georgia, I'm sorry. Come on up, Georgia.
Hopefully it won't take too long. I'm requesting, we recently had a vacancy in a .5 custodial position at the Family Service Center, so I'm requesting authorization to replace that position at a .5. It'd be grade 4, step 1, and between the 2 positions, it'd be approximately $2,500 savings this year.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. See, that didn't take very long. Okay, now, budget and adopt 216 preliminary levy. Brian, Lori, good morning.
Good morning.
What I'm passing out to you has the resolution on one side and then the summary of the tax levy on the other side. And I'm passing out 2 documentations for your discussion this morning. And you will see down on the spread levy, the amount varies just a little bit. So good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. I was talking as I was walking around the table, and I shouldn't do that because then the mic doesn't pick that up. So what you have before you is hopefully an accumulation of all the discussions that we've had over the last several months. And there was probably one point that needed some further discussion or consideration, and that was the 1,500. We talked about it, a couple weeks ago. We really did not have a consensus. A consensus is an agreement. We had a indication by 3 that should be removed. And but then last meeting we had also indicated that we had not voted on that. So, and you're voting on the preliminary levy today, so not the budget itself, but Lori and I had visited about this and decided that we would present to you 2 summary sheets indicating what the spread levy would be amount, and one, of course, is $27,635,435, and the other one is $1,500 higher at $27,636,935. The percentage of the levy is the same, 5.66, and on the back side of that is the resolution that we're asking for you to pass today. And I guess we'll leave it up to you, Mr. Chair, what discussion you want to have or any questions that we may answer on it. I think we've kind of covered everything, so.
Mr. Chair?
Wayne?
Yes, I know we have a difference of opinion on this board, which is fine. That's why we all sit here. I am in favor of the $1,500 for the animal shelter, and I'd just like to take a moment to say why. And this is from the handout that we received 2 weeks ago. The Homeward Animal Shelter collaborates with the Rape and Abuse Crisis Center and YWCA of Cass County, Cass Clay, to provide temporary foster homes for the pets of families who have to leave a domestic violence situation under the Safe Paws program. And I think that's a good thing to do. Homeward Animal Shelter provides an in-school education about the humane care of animals to school-age children. I also think that's a good thing to do. Since the Homeward Animal Shelter rescues animals from the Moorhead Clay County impounds, it will benefit the Clay County residents directly. That's also good. It is a program, and they say, this is coming from them, and I agree, it is a program worth funding because Homeward Animal Shelter relieves Clay County of the alternative of destroying unclaimed animals. Furthermore, their spay-neuter before adoption program plays a big role in reducing the unwanted and stray animals in our community due to overpopulation. And I think that that is also a good thing. I also feel that we're not in a financial crisis in Clay County, and therefore I make a motion to include the $1,500 for the Homeward Animal Shelter.
Okay, any other discussion? You made a motion to that effect?
Made a motion.
Is there
If we
a
have a
second?
second, more discussion. If not, then it's over.
I'll discuss more further.
Mr. Chair, could we have a second before we discuss? Or if we
Yeah,
don't
do we have a second on the
then let's-
motion?
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion.
Just because something has been on the books for a long amount of time doesn't mean that we don't have to discuss it, and so I appreciate the fact that we're entertaining that. There are a couple of reasons why I don't feel like we should support this $1,500 at this time. We currently pay for the services that we use through this organization. They do a great thing in our community, and I'm happy to say that Clay County supports them in a large capacity. The 0.03% of their budget that this will cover is very minimal. I don't feel the effects will be huge. The other reason I feel this is it our responsibility as Clay County Commissioners to support the program that's based out of Fargo when there are other humane treatment facilities in Clay County that I feel that maybe the money should go to first. So with that, I do not support this money in the budget at this time.
Frank?
I guess I would have the same, I mean, as far as supporting it, you know, I look at, not that I'm against dogs or cats and all that stuff, but I'm just looking, why should we support, you know, I think we could raise that, if they need $1,500, raise the license of a dog and cat. I mean, there's licenses, each city has a dog and cat, like, can they raise that by 50 cents and they'll raise their money, you know, and I just don't know whether we should start supporting every little unit that wants, okay, now we want to do for dogs and cats, and then we'll do for different things. You know, I think we should be more on the human side, and I think if we want to support dogs and cats, there should be some different avenues than us raising the telling the whole people of Clay County, you know, that we should support this.
Brian, I think I asked this before, but there is no direct impact, say, to our sheriff's office and what they're doing in terms of this $1,500. It isn't going to relieve some work that, say, the sheriff's office would be doing in terms of dealing with animal issues, is it?
No, Mr. Chair, and I did ask that question of the Chief Deputy, Matsero, and he said no. Anytime they have an animal that need to be euthanized or other things, they have to pay directly for that service. So I asked them what impact that would have on their operations, and they said none. It would be the
See,
bigger
that's
issue.
the issue I have with this, is that I think if we're contributing money, we're, you know, rather than making a donation to somebody, which I don't think that we should be in the business of in terms of using public money, but if it's relieving the work of one of our departments or contributing directly to that, then I don't view it as that type of a donation, so, Frank?
Well, I'm just looking at another way that they can raise money, I just looked at the Wandats yesterday, all these dogs, I don't know, is there a tax in selling dogs, I mean, I look at the Wandats here, there's one for $500, one for $750, one for $1,000. These people that are selling these dogs, are they paying anything into, I mean, they're the ones that are producing the dogs. What is their contributions to the Humane Society? That they're bringing dogs into Clay County and selling them for $1,000.
I just want to make one note, and I have adopted an animal through a facility like this, and it's a fantastic thing. When we talk about our sheriff's department paying for a service, there are many times that I can specifically think of one entity on the other side of Holly that the sheriff's department has called and needed to have animals sent out that way, and we are not making a donation to that group. And so, and under those parameters is why I don't feel that we should support this one specific instance.
Kevin?
Well, for $1,500, this is a kind of a pull at your heartstrings type of a decision here. But what Commissioner Mojo just said, I think carries some weight, and that is the fact that we do have other facilities within our county that we are not contributing to that can and do provide some of the same services that are being done by the Humane Society. To say we don't support the Humane Society, I don't think is what this vote is even really about. It's helping funding it when I think Commissioner Gross raises a good point. Have all other options been made available to be able to fill out their budget? We're going to get slapped on this one either way. So, but I think originally I thought to myself that how could I vote against this? But in the same regard, maybe we're going to have to look at, are we being fair by giving to this one entity and not to others? And until we can come up to some conclusion on that, then I think we should just withhold these funds and go.
Well, I think that was my point, that, if we're making a donation, I mean, personally, I don't think we should be in the business of making donations. If there's some benefit to one of our county departments, then I don't view it as a donation, and I don't think that's necessarily what we should
I think
do,
in a sense we do already make some donations. I consider our donation to the our funds to the Clay County Fair Association as a donation on our part, but again, it's something that is the benefit to all of our county citizens who go to that Clay County organization for family events. So there's some differences there, but I still view that as a donation. There's no services that we receive for it. It's independently run. But, I seconded this motion because I wanted to hear the thoughts of everybody on this board. And it's not very often that I will probably vote against my own second. But it was the purpose of being able to have this discussion, which we needed to have. And in fairness to Wayne, I wanted this discussion to happen. So, Mr. Chair, I think I'm ready for you to call for the vote.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion does not carry. Okay, so that one is resolved. So it's, we're looking at approving the preliminary levy, and it would be the one with the total, 5.22, that one that indicates that amount, so.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we authorize the 2016 preliminary budget with the spread levy of $27,635,435.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the preliminary levy for 2016. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, when it comes to the budget and the work we put into it, and again, we talked here about a month ago, or at least I did, about being able to go in here and set a preliminary budget, knowing to the public that that is the most we're going to do, but we still, by the December, we have the ability to go down. And I still hope that between now and the end of December, we can still find ways to even better what we have here. And hopefully that we can, by the time December rolls around, we can even do something even slightly less than this. So I just wanted to make that point.
Brian?
Mr. Chair, the motion, I'm assuming it certainly identified the levy, spread levy, which is included in Resolution 2015-33. So
Yes, that was, my motion was the...
That was the
Yeah.
motion. Yep. Okay, any further discussion?
Did we get a second?
Yes, we
Yes.
did, yeah. 1 second. No further discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Good work, guys. I know
thank
you've
you.
worked a lot on this, so thank you.
Committee reports. Wayne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Tuesday, September 15th, the Local Advisory Council for Adult Mental Health. General business, presentation on what's called Gene Sight. This is a method to see which medications work best for which individuals. And this is a rather oversimplification of this. There's much more to it. Reports from Lakeland Mental Health, Clay County Social Services, and from the Moorhead Police Department. Then there were consumer concerns, reports from the Rethink Mental Health participants, and reports from those involved in the Rural Engagement Plan, and then, once again, the Transportation Work Group had a presentation. We went over and finalized the 2016-2017 work plan. On Thursday, September 17th, Lake Agassiz Regional Library full board meeting. General business, a financial report. We authorized Lake Agassiz, the director, to submit the annual report to the state and apply for the yearly grant. We went over a code of conduct policy for Lake Agassiz Regional Library. This will be posted around all the libraries and link sites. And we had board member reports, and the president's report. So it's fine.
Thank you. Frank?
Wednesday morning, I had the Clay County Extension Committee introduced a new 4-H coordinator that has been hired at Mitzi Marlin. She gave a report of what they've done so far. They've established 3 new clubs already, 4-H clubs. So they established a homeschool group that kids that are involved in homeschool, they established a group too for 4-H there. And Randy Nelson gave us a report of his accomplishments over the last 3 months. Wednesday afternoon, I had executive committee meeting of Metropolitan Council of Governments. There we went over, West Fargo is proposing they want to add another member. They feel they've had quite a bit of growth in West Fargo, and they're looking at adding another member to the board. We've been discussing that, different options of how the voting would go and whether to add that or not. Another interesting that came up with North Dakota has a thing where anytime a vote is taken other than an agenda item, or, approving the agenda, you need a roll call vote. And that is, some of the people are just saying, well, unless it's non-procedural, they don't know what's non-procedural. So some of the agencies are just saying, well, we're going to do everything roll call vote. And I don't think Minnesota, I don't know if we got into that yet, but North Dakota is looking at doing a roll call vote on everything. Every time there's a vote taken, you got to do a roll call vote. And we may have to switch to that at the Metrocog agent, since we are located in North Dakota. And we also did an update on the Personnel and Policy Committee. There's a new manual that Bill Christensen has established, and we went over that. Thursday, I had the regular meeting in the Metrocog. But the main thing that we on there, we would approve the 2016 to 2019 Transportation Improvement Program. Yesterday, we had the jail committee meeting on the mental health issues for the jail, and Julie Savat gave us a very good presentation on the recommendations that that she would,
Forward to the construction.
forward to this construction committee. I don't know whether, are we going to forward them on? I guess should probably make a copy of these to all of the members here, probably, you know, the recommendations that there were six point, you know, they're looking at making certain, some people full-time, and some good recommendations that were held. It was a good meeting, and I guess we're also looking at it, I guess I discussed it before again. Should we continue meeting? Should we have a presentation? We're looking at, I think what's happening is so much of the mental issues are being held up by some of the issues in the state. You know, we're not getting funding from the states and stuff like that. You know, we have to do all these things, you know, and do we have this state representation? You know, we're looking at inviting the legislators to a meeting yet, and for our next meeting, and see whether we can get help from the state on this. That's it.
Thank you. Jenny?
Last week I had the Planning Commission. It was a quick night, I think by their standards. It was only maybe a half-hour meeting. We just approved an interim use permit for the corn maze in southern Clay County. I also had the extension meeting, and welcome to Mincy Marlin to Clay County. I'm excited about having two extension or project coordinators. That'll be a good thing for the 4-H program. One other note on Randy Nelson's work, he has come up with the grape trial that's north of Holly, and that's been a lot of work getting it going. I think it's going to be a 5-year trial. They're really excited about the progress that they've made on that. And then I was at the AMC Policy Committee meetings at Breezy Point on Thursday and Friday. I'm on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, where we talked a lot about the avian flu update, and it did hit Clay County, but there were some other counties, Candy, Ojai specifically, that were absolutely decimated by the outbreak down there. And so the Board of Animal Health did a great presentation on how we are maybe bracing for a second round with the migration in the fall. We talked a lot about the waters of the U.S. That continues to be a highly abrasive subject as people try to figure out what exactly are the waters of the U.S. And then we talked a little bit about the DNR is proposing updating their shoreland model ordinances, and that's something that a lot of people feel that it has already been done, and so they'll discuss that further as they go down the road. And talked about the new buffer law and how that affects counties, but more so how do counties patrol it. The areas are a little gray with that as well, and it will really come down to the soil and water districts to manage that. And on the second day, we talked a lot about the permitting authority for large solar facilities and the potential legislation kind of coming this year on that. And that specifically drew my interest as we continue to talk about possibly implementing a solar aspect in our new construction at the jail. We'll just see where that goes. But then yesterday, I also had the mental health meeting, and I do appreciate that we're meeting there. I feel as though we've come up with 6 very valid recommendations for the implementation through the construction design, and feel that maybe we're in a holding pattern until we hear from Klein McCarthy more as to where, you know, what they've developed and how we can maybe add to any of these. But somebody did say that Klein McCarthy is very capable, as they've done several jails, and that's why we hired them, and so they probably are already thinking of some of these additions. But that concludes my
Thank you.
points.
On your committee meeting yesterday, you know, we just discussed the bonding committee coming next week, and if they've got some recommendations, Brian, maybe some of those can be, since this is such a main topic statewide, maybe some of those could be incorporated into your presentation, that some of the things we're looking at where that funding would help us to achieve those, so.
Yeah. Well, that's, Mr. Chair, that's exactly what my other boss said when we got back from our mental health meeting yesterday. Vicki said some of those should be incorporated, so she gave me direction on it.
Okay, well, we'll get a presentation from Vicki then here when.
So that's the important boss.
Well, no, you guys are important too.
I think one thing we did discuss, I mean, I think in the design, we've already got enough, not enough space. We got space in there assigned for the mental health program. That's already in there. So the purpose of the mental health committee, again, I always bring the subject up, are we done, or we want to go on with this mental health? And we have some good, like I said, Jenny said, we have good 6 recommendations. Does it have anything to do with the building of the place? Probably not, but it has so much to do with Clay County doing a good job in getting this jail built and moving on with it.
Commissioner Gross, if I can, I think you're on the right track, but I would say your committee involvement to this point has been to be assured from the mental health component that the structure itself is going to be capable of being able to deal with it. The biggest challenge of that committee, as I see it, is yet to come. And that's going to be how it's going to work operationally. Are we going to have outside staff? Are we going to have inside staff? That's going to be a big issue going down the road.
And that's my question, that committee, that it is the operation of that thing. So do we have anything to do with the building, or are we completely a separate new committee that's going to keep on going? I mean, after the jail is built.
I think your committee is going to be the same committee, but your work for right now, I think what you've done, what we have wanted to see done is just to get the assurance, but the component about how you're going to treat.
Right, and I think the more we meet, the more we find out that it is a very important committee.
Without question. That's why that committee might even continue to be going after the jail is built.
Exactly.
Well, I think that just, excuse me, that just maybe digs in a little bit. The representative that you had requested joined us yesterday, and we are finding out that the social issues and mental health that we're seeing statewide isn't just specific to our jail, it's statewide. And so she is able to bring that onto the State Advisory Council and say this is something that all jails are dealing with. It's not just a Clay County issue. So yes, unfortunately the issue will continue long after our jail is built. But part of we have dug in and found some parameters, and I think that's maybe important. I'll say it again, why I feel that all of us should be on that jail committee, so that we can adequately advocate for what we're talking about right now.
No. I think Julia's going around, contacted a bunch of counties, and even the program we have now, I think, is ahead of a lot of the counties.
Well, I think that what you guys are doing is hopefully going to help us with our bonding efforts, because it is everybody in the state is dealing with it, and so we're looking at specifically addressing it with our new jail, so hopefully that will be helpful to us. Kevin, you had your reports.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback on Commissioner Mojo's comments regarding this new water issue.
Waters of the U.S.
Waters of the U.S. And one of the major concerns that have come out there is do all county ditches become governed by the Corps of Engineers as opposed to county governed or watershed governed? And so that's still an issue that's unclear. And so that would be a huge deal if every permit or every water project in any county in the state of Minnesota now had to go through the permit process through the Corps. That would be a significant change, and probably one that we would really have caution over. So that's what I got out of that. Was the most significant thing for Clay County. That's uncertain yet, but we'll have to see how that goes. So, and then in terms of On last Tuesday afternoon, Grant and I and Brian met with Stephen Larson from the juvenile detention, and we just kind of had a kind of a more of a strategic planning issue on the overcrowding that we're seeing in the juvenile center, and we're looking at ways. I think we're set for 2016. We've got that all covered, but moving forward, beyond that, we're going to have to possibly look at some redesign or reconstruction of a portion of that facility, so that's yet to come. Then my only other meetings last week, of course, was also at the AMC policy conferences on Thursday and Friday, and Jenny talked mostly on the third. We did get right during our noon luncheon there on Thursday, I was very pleased to find out after our lunch speaker that, and it was dealing with our policy, NACO, and our representative from NACO. And what was good to learn out of that entire lunch meeting is that there's total gridlock in Washington, D.C. So I was glad to hear that during our our noon lunch to start off our day. So then we Jenny's committee on environment and transportation had a joint session together Thursday afternoon, and Jenny discussed those issues. Friday morning at our transportation meeting, there was presentations by Ted Schoenecker from State Aid, and there was some discussion about small cities funding. Then we got into the 2000 updates by Abby from our AMC staff. And then we got to the 2016 platform issues, and what they really wanted was the three main areas. And the three main areas that we have really haven't changed. However, MRCC had brought up a request to, obviously AMC has always been saying that to really solve our transportation needs, there needs to be a change in the gas tax. That's been the position of AMC for a long time. And MRCC, some discussions that came out of there were maybe we should be looking at some additional approaches as well as that. And one of the things that they talked about was clarifying or stating that all the sales tax that come from auto parts sales and repairs and all those things deal with transportation, therefore they should go to directly to transportation. I asked Dan, Dan sat right next to me on Friday morning, and I asked him, I said, how much money is that? And he said $400 million. Well, $400 million is a pretty significant dollar amount. So we had a lively conversation in our transportation meeting, and several MRCC members were there. And the problem with what they want to do is that $400 million is currently in the general fund. That's right. So if you pull it from the general fund to put it to transportation, it leaves a hole someplace else. And that hole that you leave someplace else, I told them I could never support that until I know where that hole is, because is the state just going to come back and say, counties, you got to make that up another way? So we're no better off, you know. And then we talked about, there was 4 other policy committees going on at the same time. And how many of them would have appreciated us pulling from their, from whether it's public safety, public health, or health and human services. If what if one of the other policy committees said, well, we want to take $400 million from transportation and move it to another area? We wouldn't like that either. So that process, and I know both of you, I think, being the member and alternate in MRCC.
The logic behind it is that those are monies that one would assume would go towards transportation rather than
right. And here's
services.
Here's what I
because you have to.
Here's what I did speak up on it was, and they kind of wanted to get it constitutionally dedicated. And that didn't go anywhere. But what I did suggest is, because there's going to be an awful lot of lobbying for some of the surplus money that's out there in the next session. And my opinion was, well, transportation should be lobbying just as much as every other group to help relieve some of the county issues and infrastructure issues. And so I did suggest that, well, maybe what could be done is just during this next session that they could consider taking the auto money out of just, not constitutionally, not permanently, but because there's a surplus in the budget, that they could take some of that money for that purpose. Because every whether it's environment or your public safety committee or the health and human services, they're all going to be saying, well, because there's this surplus, maybe we can get a portion of that back. And so that's where that went. And there was some consideration to that.
When you mentioned Stephen Larson, it just reminded me that they had a great pig roast on Friday. So.
Yeah, and they picked that on a day we couldn't.
Yeah, we were all in Breezy Point for AMC.
I was there.
That it, Kevin?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I had the issue with, or the meeting with detention also, and Kevin already discussed that. AMC, I'm on the Public Safety Committee, and we were dealing on Friday with our action items, our platform issues, and most of the priority items are funding for interoperable communications, EMS funding. There's a move for a courthouse security grant program where we get money from the state for courthouse security, which I think we could benefit from. But interestingly enough, it wasn't on the radar at all when we started the meeting, but by the time we were done, the number one priority became jails and mental health issues. And so everybody in the state is dealing with that. Everybody had a concern about it. Everybody wanted it as the number one issue for AMC for the coming year. So timing-wise, it's probably good for us in terms of what we're trying to accomplish with our new jail. So that was it for me.
I have one thing. We also did meet again this morning, kind of preparing for the state bonding committee coming here. And Commissioner Mojo, I think we've asked you to maybe give the welcome. And then I think both the sheriff and Brian will be giving the detailed report. So. But that's, hopefully we can have, I know Grant and I are going to both be out of town, but
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Brian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Juvenile centers discussion has already been covered. WDAY did a little home buyout thing in regards to, and also on the lettering in the courthouse. So hopefully we kept you up to date on that. Had some personnel issues we've discussed. We had a central administration managers meeting. Talked a lot about recruitment and retention of employees. I think that's kind of a buzzword all the way around with everybody right now, with the economy is doing as well as it is. We'll probably need to, you may see that in a retreat topic or something this winter. Had a diversion administrative advisory meeting. We had a land evaluation meeting with, in reference to the item that was removed today, and we'll meet a little further on that before it comes to the board. We had a conference call in reference to some diversion issues, and had a meeting with the maintenance personnel over at Joe's shop. Did some work with the chamber yesterday in regards to revising some of their policy statements. We had the jail mental health meeting yesterday afternoon, and that's already been discussed. And then we had the planning to finalize presentations for the bonding presentation, which will take place next Tuesday evening. So that's already been covered as well. So, Mr. Chair, that's about Concludes my report.
Thank you. Anything else? Vicki, did you want to give your presentation now? No, okay. We're adjourned.